It is a continuation of the story. If you hadn't seen the previous chapter, go and watch them first to understand the story. Link in the description. The guards standing outside exchanged worried glances as the blue flame intensified, its growing power evident in the increasing heat and light emanating from the Chongwa. What a terrible thing to do. Seriously, one of them muttered, their voice laced with a mix of concern and dismay. They seemed unsure how to react, caught between their duty to observe and report and the inexplicable nature of the events unfolding before them. The guards' words were barely audible over crackling of the flames, but their tone conveyed a sense of foreboding, as if they sensed that the situation was spiraling out of control. The old man stood behind the door. His eyes fixed on the blue flames danced higher and higher. A deep crease etched his forehead, and his brow was furrowed with concern. His gaze was intense, as if he was searching for something in the flames, or perhaps worried about the consequences of what was happening. His hands were clasped together, and he seemed to be holding his breath, his entire being focused on the spectacle before him. The old man's expression was a mix of worry and fascination. The old man's eyes widened in alarm as the flame's sudden shift to green filled the room. He hurried in, his face etched with worry. "Chongwa!" he exclaimed, his voice laced with concern. His gaze swept the space, taking in Yun's position amidst the flames. The old man's hands moved swiftly, as if he was trying to mitigate the situation or perhaps understand the implications of the green flame. His thoughts seemed to be racing, trying to decipher the meaning behind the color change and its potential consequences. The green flame seemed to hold significance, and the old man's reaction suggested that this development was both unexpected and potentially critical. The guards whispered among themselves, "Look over there! Ha! It's the court physician. He's been taking care of the young master as his personal doctor for 15 years. I'm sure he treats him like his own child." One of them nodded in agreement. "TSK bags. Exactly what I think, too." Their voices were filled with a mix of respect and familiarity as they spoke about the court physician's dedication and care for the young master. The guards' conversation was hushed, but their words conveyed a sense of admiration for the physician's commitment and the special bond he shared with his patient. The green flame engulfed the Chongwa, and the old man's face contorted in distress. "To even use Chongwa like this, that's just cruel," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. His eyes widened in disbelief as he stared at the scene before him. The old man's expression was one of shock and horror, as if he couldn't comprehend the magnitude of what was happening. He took a step back, his movements hesitant and uncertain, as if he was recoiling from the very sight itself. His face was pale, and his eyes seemed to hold a deep sadness, as if he was witnessing something that was beyond redemption. The guard's sudden exclamation, "Whoa, what is this?" caught the old man's attention, and he turned back, his face still etched with shock and dismay. As he turned, his eyes widened even further, and his mouth dropped open in utter astonishment. Whatever he saw, it seemed to have left him speechless, his entire being frozen in a state of complete shock. The old man's reaction was intense, as if he had witnessed something that defied all logic and reason, something that shattered his understanding of the world. The guard's words trailed off, and an eerie silence fell, as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The green flame coalesced into the majestic form of an ancient beast, its features becoming clearer with each passing moment. As the shape solidified, it was unmistakable, a mighty dragon, its scales glinting in the light of the flames. The dragon's roar thundered through the room, a deafening sound that shook the very foundations of the space. The air vibrated with the dragon's power, and the old man's eyes went wide with awe and trepidation stood frozen, his gaze locked onto the dragon, as if mesmerized by its sheer majesty. The guards stumbled backward, their faces pale with fear, as the dragon's roar echoed through the room, a primal and awe-inspiring sound. The scene shifted, and the camera plunged into the heart of the Chongwa, where Yun's dance had become a mesmerizing spectacle. His body moved in perfect harmony with the flames, his aura bursting forth from his very being. The energy emanating from him was palpable, a vibrant, pulsating force that seemed to merge with the fire itself. As he danced, his aura swirled around him, taking on a life of its own. The flames danced in tandem with him, their movements a blur of color and light. The dragon's roar still echoed in the background, but within the Chongwa, the only sound was the soft whoosh of the flames and the rhythmic beat of Yun's dance. His aura continued to build, a brilliant, shimmering light that threatened to overflow the boundaries of the Chongwa. Yun's eyes met his teacher's, and he saw the nod of approval, the smile of satisfaction. "Yes, that's it," his teacher said, his voice filled with pride and encouragement. Yun smiled back, a radiant grin spreading across his face. In that moment, he felt a deep connection with his teacher, a sense of understanding and shared knowledge. The teacher's words were more than just praise. They were a validation of Yun's growth, his mastery of the dance, and his connection to the Chongwa. The smile that passed between them was a moment of pure understanding, a silent communication that spoke volumes about their bond and their shared passion. Yun's teacher stepped forward, a smile still on his face, and said, "Let me join too." Without another word, they both began to dance, their movements perfectly synchronized as they flowed across the space within the Chongwa. Their eyes locked onto each other, a deep connection sparking between them. As they danced, their movements became a beautiful, intricate ballet, each step and gesture mirroring the other. The flames seemed to respond to their dance, swirling and leaping in time with their footsteps. The air was filled with intense energy, as if the very fabric of reality was being woven and unwoven by their dance. Together, they seemed to be creating something new, something powerful, their bond growing stronger with every passing moment. The energy emanating from Yun and his teacher's dance began to surge outward, bursting beyond the boundaries of the Chongwa. The flames transformed into a strong, pulsating blue energy that flowed outward in all directions. The blue energy was intense and powerful, illuminating the surrounding space with a brilliant electric blue light. As it flowed outward, it seemed to be imbuing everything it touched with a sense of vitality and strength. The old man, the guards, and anyone else in the vicinity were bathed in the blue glow, their faces filled with a mix of awe and wonder. The energy's power was palpable, and it seemed to be calling out to something or someone, drawing them inexorably toward the Chongwa. The guards exchanged disbelieving glances, one of them whispering, "I've never seen anything like this before." The other guard nodded in agreement. "You worked here for 15 years and never seen something like this. Who would believe it if someone told them?" They spoke in hushed tones, their eyes fixed on the spectacle unfolding before them. The guards' faces reflected their astonishment, their minds struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what they were witnessing. They seemed to be questioning their own sanity, wondering if they were dreaming or if this was indeed reality. The guards' conversation trailed off as they continued to watch, mesmerized by the blue energy and the dance within the Chongwa. The green dragon's roar thundered to the air once more, and the guards' eyes widened in alarm. "This doesn't look like a dragon in rampaging," one of them exclaimed, their voice laced with concern. The guards took a step back, their faces pale as they gazed at the dragon's majestic, yet fearsome form. The dragon's roar seemed to be growing louder, its power and intensity increasing with each passing moment. The old man's eyes were wide with shock and disbelief, his face frozen in a mixture of awe and horror. He stood motionless, his body rigid as he watched the unfolding spectacle. His gaze darted between the green dragon, the blue energy, and Yun's dance, his mind struggling to comprehend the sheer magnitude of what he was witnessing. The old man's expression was one of utter bewilderment, as if he had stumbled into a realm beyond his understanding. He seemed to be questioning everything he thought he knew, his entire worldview shaken by the events transpiring before him. The old man's shock and disbelief were palpable, his very presence seeming to vibrate with the intensity of the moment. The guard voices rose in alarm as tracks began to appear, and they cried out, "The solar celestial path! Get back!" But it was too late. The path exploded in a blinding flash of light and energy, sending shards of celestial power flying everywhere. The guards and the old man instinctively covered their faces with their hands, shielding themselves from the debris. When they cautiously opened their eyes and looked at the solar celestial path, they were met with a sight of utter devastation. The path was completely broken, its fragments scattered everywhere. The destruction of the path seemed to have far-reaching implications, and the onlookers stood in stunned silence, unsure what this meant for the future. The old man's eyes widened in utter astonishment as a figure emerged in the distance, walking towards him. And then he saw his own reflection staring back at him. But it wasn't just a reflection. It was Yun, his face identical to the old man's own. The old man's shock was absolute, his mind reeling as he stared at the duplicate of himself walking towards him. The guards, too, were stunned, unsure what to make of this bizarre development. Yun's calm demeanor was a stark contrast to the old man's shock, as he continued walking toward the old man with an air of quiet confidence. The old man's eyes were fixed on Yun's face, his expression a mix of confusion, shock, and a hint of fear. The old man's face lit up with joy as he shouted, "Young master!" But Yun's response was far from warm. His voice was low and menacing as he declared, "From the depth of hell, I have returned." The word sent a chill down the old man's spine, and the guards exchanged nervous glances. Yun's eyes seemed to burn with an inner fire as he spoke, his voice dripping with an otherworldly intensity. The old man's joyful expression faltered, replaced by a look of concern and trepidation. The air seemed to vibrate with tension as Yun's words hung in the air, leaving everyone wondering what exactly had returned from the depths of hell. The roar that followed sent shivers down their spines, a primal sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the space. Yun's eyes lost their fierce intensity, and his body began to sway unsteadily. He stumbled, his energy seemingly drained, and felt the ground with a soft thud. The old man's expression transformed from concern to alarm as he rushed toward Yun, calling out, "Young master," in a voice filled with worry. The old man's movements were swift and urgent as he reached Yun's side. The scene shifted to a serene and well-appointed Imperial Court Medical Center, with intricately designed furnishings and soothing colors. Yun lay on a comfortable bed, his chest rising and falling with each gentle breath. The old man sat beside him, watching over him with a mixture of concern and devotion. The old man's eyes never left Yun's face, his gaze filled with a deep affection and worry. The old man's thoughts swirled with amazement as he gazed at Yun. "Incredible," he muttered to himself. He only lost consciousness due to dehydration and exhaustion, and these are just minor injuries. He shook his head, incredulous. It's hard to believe he survived being inside the burning solar celestial path, let alone the Chongwa. Unbelievable. The old man's eyes narrowed, his mind racing with the implications. He couldn't fathom how Yun had endured such intense conditions and emerged with so few injuries. The old man's thoughts were a jumble of wonder, concern, and awe as he continued to watch over Yun, try and make sense of the extraordinary events that had unfolded. The door to the medical center room slid open, and 2 guards entered, their faces serious. "Court physician," one of them said, "the palace lord is urgently looking for you." The old man's expression turned grave, and he nodded. "I understand. I am coming." With a final glance at Yun, the old man rose from his seat and followed the guards out of the room, leaving Yun alone in the quiet space. The door closed behind them, enveloping the room in silence once more. Yun lay still, his chest continuing to rise and fall with each gentle breath. The person in black clothes stood on the roof, gazing down at Chongwa with an intense stare. With a silent leap, they jumped down into the room, their eyes fixed on Chongwa with a killing intent. The air seemed to grow colder as a mysterious figure approached Chongwa's bedside. They carefully took out a small bottle from their cloak and poured some liquid into Chongwa's mouth. The figure's movements were swift and precise, their eyes darting left and right to ensure they weren't being watched. The room was quiet, the only sound the soft dripping of the liquid into Chongwa's mouth. The figure's gaze lingered on Chongwa for a moment, but Chongwa's eyes rolled back his head, the whites visible as he let out a low, pained growl. The liquid seemed to burn his throat, and he started to spit it out, his body convulsing in discomfort. His muscles tensed, and he began to tremble violently, his bed creaking beneath him. The room was silent except for Chongwa's labored breathing and the sound of his body shaking. The liquid's effect seemed to be coursing through his veins, causing him immense pain and distress. Chongwa's face contorted in agony. His eyes still rolled back as he struggled to cope with the mysterious substance's potency. The figure in black clothes reappeared beside Chongwa, their voice low and menacing as they whispered, "Blame your filthy mother for this." The words seemed to be laced with venom, and Chongwa's eyes, still wild with pain, locked onto the figure. For a moment, their gazes met, and the air was charged with tension. The figure's words hung in the air, heavy with malice, as Chongwa's body continued to tremble and convulse. The figure's face was shrouded in shadow, making it impossible to discern their features, but their voice was filled with an unmistakable hatred. With a final thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss the next chapter.